Welcome to episode 133 of Real Health Radio. You can find the links talked about as part of this episode at the show notes, which is www.7, so the word all spelled out, SEVEN health.com/133.
Welcome to Real Health Radio. Health advice that's more than just about how you look. And here's your host, Chris Sandel.
Hey all, thanks for joining me for another episode of Real Health Radio. So this week, once again, it's another guest episode, and this time on the show, I'm chatting with Ollie Aplin. So Ollie is a designer with over 10 years experience working with clients like Jamie Oliver, the BBC and Channel 4, amongst others. He's also an ambassador for men's mental health, and he spent the first 18 years of his life dealing with his mother's mental health issues, and this was then followed by his own mental breakdown in his early 20s. But it was this breakdown that led Ollie into therapy and exposed him to the power of journaling. And 10 years on, he created MindJournal, which is the world's first guided journal created just for men. So I first became aware of Ollie a while ago when he appeared on Laura Thomas's podcast. And I listened to that episode and was just really floored by his story. And this episode is ostensibly about the power of journaling, but there's a whole lot of backstory to get to that point. And Ollie talks about his childhood, growing up with little money and a mother who suffered from bipolar. And Ollie is very open about the struggles as part of this, and I should give some warnings up front. We talk about suicide attempts, death, grieving the loss of a loved one, drug taking, mental breakdowns. So this is by no means a light episode. But it's through all this that Ollie is led to journaling and sees the real transformation in his life as part of this. And this is something that completely resonated with me, because while Ollie's book is targeted at men and most of my clients are women, I use journaling with nearly all of them. And journaling is probably the single best tool that I have for helping clients to explore their feelings and belief and to help them deal with the psychological side of what's going on in their life. And I'm typically pretty good at following my own advice, although I'd say that the two areas that this isn't true is meditating and journaling. And these are suggestions that I make with nearly all clients, but then regularly fail to do myself. And I'm changing this though. I've been using Sam Harris's Waking Up podcast, his Waking Up app for meditation. And this has been really, really helpful. So previously my recommendation was always Headspace, but Waking Up for me is even better. And so this has been helping me. And even though I am far from a daily meditator, I'm doing it much more frequently than I was. And then the second area is journaling. And this is down to Ollie. So I got a copy of MindJournal in what I thought would be just useful preparation for the interview to see what was included as part of the book, to help when I'm putting together questions, etc. But I've started using the book and I'm finding it really useful. And I'm definitely okay with writing down what's in my head and getting my emotions out on paper. So I don't have that fear of the blank page that Ollie talks about and that many people do. But having the journal with all its prompts does make it much easier to get started and to be consistent. So yeah, Ollie has definitely helped me to start journaling. So as part of the show, we dive into journaling and some of the benefits that Ollie has got from it and some of the benefits more generally, and also touching on like why Ollie created something that was specifically for men. So this is one of my favorite guest episodes, and it's one that I would love you to share. I really do believe that what Ollie is doing is something that's needed and is hugely important. So if you know anyone that would benefit, please either share this episode or share his site, mindjournals.com, where you can get the journal and find out a lot more about him as well. So without further preamble, let's get on with the show. Here is my conversation with Ollie Aplin. Hey, Ollie, thanks for joining me today on the podcast.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me on.
So you are the creator of MindJournal, so a journal that is aimed at men, which helps men to get into journal writing and probably from a bigger picture perspective, helping to support men's mental health. And so part of the conversation today, I want to go through journal writing and your book, which I have a copy of and I've been using. But I think where would be a good place to start is with your story, because it's really through your life and your experiences that led you to find journaling yourself. So to start with, do you want to just explain who you are and what you do? And we can start with the present, and then we can move our discussion back to your earlier life.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I'm actually the co-creator of MindJournal. It's something that me and my other half have been working on since 2015. I think that's when the idea popped into my head of creating a journal that was a guided journal to help people that had never written in a journal before. And on the side of running MindJournal, we also have a design agency that we run. We're both designers, and it was kind of born out of a need and a necessity to just do something that felt a little bit more wholesome, that had a bit more purpose to it, other than just doing the day-to-day freelance kind of corporate design work that we've been doing.
Yeah.
And then it's just taken over. Essentially, it's consumed our lives, and it's just opened up conversations that we never thought we were ever going to have, and opportunities, and it's just really grabbed people. So now it's just been a case of keeping the movement that we've kind of created alive, and how do we kind of keep the conversation going, and how do we keep helping more and more guys kind of get into journaling.
Let's then start with how you got into journaling, and we go kind of back to the start. Like, where did you grow up?
So I'm from Hastings, which is along the south coast, and it's quite a rough town. It gets a bit of a bad kind of press, if you like, of the drug issues there and the crime rate and stuff like that. And I grew up.
Has that changed? I mean, like, I know there's places like Margate that have kind of had a change in the demographic or the people living there. Is Hastings had that gentrification come through?
It's trying to, yeah. I think I think it's one of those seaside towns that's always been trying to kind of shake the stigma that it's kind of that it's got about itself. And it's one of those things that it's like anyone who's lived in their hometown will tell you that it's not a nice place to live, or I'm glad I got out of there. Whereas people from the outside go, oh, it looks really nice and it looks really picturesque. And I went there for the day and it was really amazing. And then but you have a different experience from growing up there as a kid and hanging around on the streets and also just having the kind of childhood that I had there, which was quite intense. Just gives a lot of heaviness for me in terms of my kind of view on the town.
Sure.
But no, I think it is a lovely town, and there are amazing people there, and it is trying to kind of do good things, and yeah, it's just another one of those seaside towns that's trying to do its thing as best it can.
Sure. And so then tell us about your childhood, and like, what do you remember from growing up and being young in Hastings?
So I grew up with just my mum and my older sister. She's about 7 years older than me, and my parents split up when I think I was about 5, I think it was. We were living in Margate at the time, another seaside town that's had some issues.
Yeah.
I seem to just like going on tour of all the seaside towns. And they split up in Margate, and my mum had family in Hastings, so it made sense for her to kind of come back to Hastings and bring us with her. So growing up, it was very much kind of, mum's back was up against the wall. We didn't have any money, and things were just, hard. Things were hard for her and they were hard for us, and it was hard to see her, struggling to kind of find jobs and work and get money and, feed us and keep us going kind of thing.
And did you feel like, I think sometimes when you're a kid, this is all I know, so this feels normal. Did it feel normal, or was there a realization of, okay, this is really difficult, mom is really struggling here, or we are really struggling here?
I think I was so young. I was only, 5 or 6 or something like that. So I think there was an element of where I was a bit more robust to it. When as you're a child, you're a bit more kind of like, you can adapt a bit more easily because you don't know things in that much detail. And also your parents are kind of shielding you from the truth as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I think there was a sense of, in me, which was, this is maybe a little bit more of an adventure. And I don't ever remember feeling scared or ever feeling confused. But these are real, early stages of my life. So I don't have that much memory of my emotional state at that time. I just remember there's like snapshots of times where I just thought, I kind of, looking back now, I can see it and go, God, that was extreme. That was crazy.
Yeah.
There was a time when me and my sister were dancing to Top of the Pops, I think it was, which just a normal thing you do as a kid. And there was a biker gang who lived in the flat downstairs, and they came up and started shouting through the window at us to stop dancing. And this, really aggressive big guys, and I remember screaming at my mum saying, there's someone shouting through the window. And this is probably, signifies the kind of woman my mum was. She, without hesitation, just ran out into the street to confront this biker gang, and told them that if they ever shouted at us again, she would effing kill them. And from that point on, they completely respected her, and we could dance as much as we liked. And she was 5'2", this tiny woman, and she's shouting at a group of biker gangs. And I think that was probably my memory of thinking, cool, my mum's actually quite scary. I don't want to mess with her. But that's kind of who she was. That was her personality, which was, don't touch my kids. And she was just very feisty and very kind of, scary.
And so then how did things progress from there? So I know, as part of your story, your mum was diagnosed with bipolar. So at what stage did that actually happen?
Well, that was years later. I think there was plenty of episodes in the house that were, looking back again, not normal, behavior that was, extreme and very upsetting at the time. Lots of different scenarios of drinking and lots of shouting and just moments of depression in her and paranoia. There was a kind of court battle, if you like, going on through the divorce and the kind of who we were going to live with kind of thing. Me and my sister. So that was taking a strain on her. But it was only until I think my sister left home, and so it was just me and my mum. And I was obviously at that age, I was probably about 12, 13, I think, when my sister left home, maybe a bit younger. Okay. So I was starting to become my own person at that age. I was heading towards becoming a teenager, and I was in the last years of my primary school and heading towards secondary school, and because of the way life was, I was quite independent. I was quite a confident kid. I had to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and look after myself. I think that there was a shift that I can see now, which was my mum's role was changing. Essentially, she was no longer having to fight the world to protect us. My sister had left home, and it wouldn't be long before really I was going to be thinking about leaving home or making plans of my own. And I think that's when the depression and the drinking got more intense. as the years went on, and through my early teens until my kind of mid-teens, around sort of 15-ish, was when I was like, okay, I don't think Mum's quite well. And she, I think around at that time, she got diagnosed with manic depression. Is what they called it then. And she was on various medication to kind of, try and balance the highs with the lows. And I sort of almost took on the role of a carer to kind of either try and keep her balanced and keep her, not too depressed and not slip into a kind of really dark place. And also if she was on a high, try and manage that and kind of ride that kind of wave. So they were probably like the tough years of where I think her mental health significantly went, downhill. And we kind of struggled for a bit.
And so how was it when your sister moved out? Like, do you remember that being a real struggle and thinking, oh my God, I'm now being left to deal with this on my own? Or you were more, I don't know, oblivious to it? How did that, what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, my whole growing up, from when they first got divorced, my parents got, split up, and to my sister, leaving home, to my dad moving to Tenerife at pretty much the same time. So he stopped being a kind of weekend dad to a kind of summer holidays only kind of dad. I never really, I think the way that I'd learned to survive these things that were happening around me was to just become a rock, essentially, not allow it to get into me, to not affect me, to just accept it and just move forwards, just keep moving forwards. I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. There's no point in me getting into a state about it. I'm not going to get emotional about it. I'm not going to tell Mum that I'm upset because that'll upset her, which could trigger an episode. I just have to remain neutral, and come across that I'm okay with everything. I'm okay with dad leaving. I'm okay with, my sister leaving home. I'm okay with Mum drinking and having an outburst. It's this is normal kind of thing. I would just tell myself that this was just this is how life is kind of thing. It didn't ever go any deeper, and I think that was just a natural instinctive coping mechanism that that just evolved from that, maybe that first early moment, which was, them splitting up. I just naturally just clicked into survival mode, which was lockdown, emotional lockdown and communication lockdown. Don't talk about it to anyone. Don't share this information with anyone. Don't show any emotion. Remain calm. That was the coping strategy. Did
your sister adopt a similar strategy, or did you guys chat about it, or did she want to be chatting about it with you?
No, not really. No. Again, I think we had both created this coping strategy, which was to not talk about it, but we was also trained by our mum to not talk about it. Through the court battle and the divorce. She didn't want any information of what was going on at home, the realities of how we were struggling, to be fed to my dad as ammunition, if you like, as information that he could use against her. And she, that meant that you couldn't talk about it to your friends. You can't talk about it to the teachers. You can't talk about it to anyone. You can't share this information with anyone. And that was from, I think, pretty much day one.
Right.
So from that first moment that we left Margate and we were in Hastings, it was very much a case of you don't talk about this stuff. You don't talk about what's going on at home. And if you can't talk about anything, you can't really relate to it on an emotional level. You can't allow yourself to feel it because you've denied yourself the ability to talk about it to anyone else, which meant we also couldn't talk about it to her. We couldn't share with her how not talking was making us feel, or how, you know, the biker gang downstairs made us feel, or any of the other situations that were going on, and at any point were making us feel. You know, when my dad decided to leave Tenerife and he asked me, are you okay with this? I was like, yeah, fine. You know, that was my instinctive. I'd been trained to not tell him that I wasn't fine with him going to Tenerife, because again, I had been trained, if you like, and taught not to. So that just all seemed normal. It just like, you know, okay, our dad's going to Tenerife and Kel's leaving home and mum's drinking, and okay, cool. This. I'm going to now start in secondary school, and you know, things are tough there, but this is just the way it is, and it just accept it, kind of thing.
Sure. And so then, how did your teenage years pan out as part of that?
Not brilliantly, I don't think. I mean, I was lucky enough to find an amazing group of friends that all had other things going on at home that were similar to what I was experiencing. And we had all also been trained not to talk about it. So there was this kind of, you know, agreement between us all that we all knew what we were experiencing, even though none of us actually knew what we were all experiencing.
Yeah.
And that kind of connection allowed us to kind of just have an outlet. You know, we could just have fun. We could just have banter and crack jokes and, you know, party and drink and smoke and take drugs, just knowingly that we were all in this together. We were all just trying to survive as best we could. And we were all just looking for that escape. And so that was the outlet. That became my, you know, through the really tough years with mum, when, you know, she was trying to take her own life quite a lot, and she was really slipping into quite a dark place, and I didn't have a system around me to know how to deal with that, how to care for someone like that, what to do. My friends and the kind of drug taking really ramped up, and became my kind of, you know, my kind of support zone, if you like.
And when your mum got that diagnosis for bipolar, and then so there was or manic depression, and there was finally then an explanation around it, were there any support groups, or was there anything that then could help her? I don't know what was available on the NHS, etc., but could she get some outside help?
She did. She had to. I think after there was a couple of suicide attempts where they flagged her as a risk, where she had to be sectioned for I think about a week. But that meant that she then had to have a weekly check-in to a support group. And if she didn't check in, they knew there was a problem. So that kind of made her have to become a bit accountable for her actions, a bit more than just, you know, just me. She had to make sure she was at this place at this time, and there for the day. I think it was like a day centre thing that she was part of. But it also meant that if she didn't go, they would stop her benefits. So there was an element of, okay, in order to, you know, keep us fed and the rent paid, I have to go to this place and tell them. And she was very paranoid in that she didn't really think there was much of a problem with her, and that there was actually, the danger was all these other people.
Right.
So she kind of saw it as like, oh, to keep them happy, I have to go to this place. And if I keep them happy, they continue the support for us. And I think there was an element of where she didn't entirely believe that she was as severely ill as she was. And again, it wasn't something that we could talk about together, and that I could share with her and go, no, I think you really are. Because I didn't know, I wasn't supported in any way through the system in terms of, you know, 16, 17-year-old, you know, living with a bipolar mum. No one was helping me to understand her condition. I was just seeing it firsthand, and I didn't have any training to know how to deal with a mentally ill person. And so I think because I was in the household who was sometimes agreeing with her, it didn't help her think that she did have a problem, because I didn't know how to communicate it with her, and I also didn't know how to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
So I suppose, this is back in 2000, in the early 2000s, and things have come a long way. But back then, in small seaside town, small budgets and everything else, there just wasn't the right understanding, the right knowledge, the right funding and everything else to kind of help people in that situation, help us essentially. So I think that it was just a case of everyone was just doing the best they thought they could, and that wasn't good enough for me or for my mum. And
so this all came to a pretty sad ending, which I would love you to be able to kind of talk about and explain.
Yeah. So it kind of, I always look back at it and think, I just got with my first girlfriend. So I was like 18, I think, something like that. And I just started my third year at college, which was almost like my first year at uni, part of a kind of higher national diploma course. So I'd got accepted, if you like, into the university system. And, I had money in my pocket, which meant that she didn't have to worry about me financially, because once you turn 18 and the money kind of stops into some sort of tax credit stuff kind of stops.
Yeah.
And she was always worried about money, because that was just her thing, for forever. She'd always been worrying about money. And so there was this element of where she could see that I was okay. I had a good group of friends. I had this girlfriend. I was, on my own mission of becoming a designer, which I'd been wanting to do since I was like 14. And she knew I was fine. She didn't have to worry about me. She didn't have to look after me. And I think in her eyes, she just looked at that situation and thought, well, my job is done. What am I doing here? I don't need to fight for him anymore. And, my sister had her own son, and she had her own life going on and everything else. So we were both independent of her. And there was a row we had where she knew that I would never leave her, because I wouldn't. And I would never leave the home and find my own place, because I'd always be worrying about her. So she threw me out. She was like, the only way you're going to leave is if I throw you out. So I came back from work and all my stuff was on the street. And she's like, you're not coming in. I've changed the locks. You've got to go and find your own place to live. Get out. And that was my mum's way of dealing with things. It was almost like, ripping the plaster off. I've made the decision. It's final. That's it. There's no conversation to be had. There's no discussion. So I was like, okay, cool. Right. Okay. Deal with this moment. Found my own place, because I had the money to do so and everything else. And then she came round. It was quite a big argument that we'd had, because I was really annoyed about being thrown out, obviously.
Yeah.
And she came round. She went on a trip with this daycare place that she had to check into. They did a trip to Cornwall, or they did something right. And she came back from this trip, and I'd finally found a place. And I said, oh, you should come around and have a look, have a cup of tea, and let's have a hug and, make up if you like. And so she came around and checked the place out. And then I think it was within about a week of that, she took her own life. And because I wasn't home, because I wasn't there, I couldn't save her. Usually I would have come back and found her, in a half dead state, and, phoned the emergency services, and she would have got, saved and everything else. And we would have continued to the next episode. And I feel like that was her plan all along, was to just kind of let me be free, and let me kind of, and to free herself, if you like, was to go, my work here is done. There's no more that I can do. I'm just holding him back. I let him get a place and settle, and I make sure that he's safe and well, and then I'm gonna call it a day. And then I just found out through one of the guys at this day day centre place knew where I worked. He came in and said, "Oh, your mum hasn't turned up." So that's when all the system kind of flags up and goes, "Oh, there's an issue here. She hasn't checked in." And then because I didn't have keys to get in, because she changed the locks obviously, so I couldn't get in there. The police had to break down the door, and that's when they found her and told me the news.
So how did that affect you? And I mean, what did the next little while look like, and what did the next couple of years look like after that?
Well, there was that initial kind of like shock, obviously, and devastation and complete just meltdown of. I was just in a day of I don't know what I'm meant to do in this situation. I'd always knew it was going to come. I'd always knew it was going to come. It was never an if in my head about it. It was always a when. I was always prepared mentally, if you like, for this situation, or at least I thought I was prepared. But when reality actually happens, you realise how unprepared you actually are. And I think what did I do? I remember I thought I needed to phone my dad. I phoned my sister and told my sister, and she reacted the same way as I did. That initial shock, and then just kind of like very matter of fact. Okay, well, what do we do next? What's the procedure here? Where's the book that tells you the steps you need to take, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know what to do, I thought in that moment of. It just made sense to ring my dad, and he didn't know anything. Ever since we left Margate, he had no idea of anything that was going on at home. And so I rang him and told him in this very frank, blunt way of what had just happened. And he was in Herne Bay at the time. He was back from Tenerife, and he jumped in his car and just drove straight down. And then from that point, literally from that day when he turned up and the news was out, if you like, this is what life has been like for the last, 10 years or whatever. I just went into like a little black hole of just nothingness. I don't remember. I remember snippets of things, but I completely switched off. I have no memory of things around that time. I have snippets of things of scattering her ashes, a snippet of the funeral. I don't have no idea what I did for like the month afterwards. Apparently I wasn't at work. I don't know what I would have done. I remember when I was chatting to people about it, they kept saying to me, "But you seem so okay. You seem so fine." And I think it was because I didn't know how to be in this situation. I'd always just known how to remain neutral, so I just was neutral. I was emotionless about the situation. I think I was lost in the sense of I didn't know what I was meant to. I didn't know what are you meant to do. I think that's what I kept thinking. What am I meant to do?
Yeah.
And so I just was like, well, I just need to carry on. I need to get back to uni. I need to get back to college and just stick to the mission. The mission was to become a designer. The mission was to become super successful. And, I'm not going to let this stop me. Mum wouldn't. So let's crack on. Let's crack on, everyone. And I just told everyone, don't worry about me. I'm fine. We're going to move forwards. And I did. I blocked it all out and went back and cracked on for 2 years until I graduated. And
then at some point that stopped working.
Yeah. That plan didn't really, it worked in the sense that I graduated and I got a really good job and, I could afford things and I bought myself a car and all the things that I had in my head as goals, as that was the point to it all. When I finally reached that top of that mountain, if you like, it just I just went pop. I just had this breakdown. I just had this panic attack one night where I woke up I just woke up in this sense of just fear, like no amount of fear I've ever felt in my life. And it was almost like I was on a treadmill that was at full speed, and I'm trying to find the reason I'm afraid. It wasn't like I was running away from something on the treadmill. It was like I'm scrambling through my mind to find the fear. You know, what the hell am I so afraid of? What's this? Where's this fear?
You can swear if you want.
Oh, can I? Yeah, right, okay. And that was almost like I was out of control. That was this out of control moment of where I couldn't latch onto a thought. I couldn't latch onto a feeling. I couldn't ground myself in anything. I was just free falling through every emotion you could ever imagine. Every thought and memory was just racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I literally just thought I'd gone insane. I thought I'd lost the plot. I thought that that's it. I've broken. You know, it's all got too much, and it's finally I've just gone pop. And this went on for months. I think it was like 3 months or something like that. This went on for, where I just didn't really sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't go to work. I didn't really socialise. No, I don't even think I left the house. I was having mild hallucinations of things like I'd be in the shower and the water would be blood. So I think I'd have blood on my hands, and then I thought I'd cut myself, and I thought I was trying to kill myself. But it would only be like 3-4 seconds, but it would feel so long. It was just agonizing.
And given your mum's sort of history with bipolar, was there a fear? Okay, this is now happening to me.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, this is how Mum must have felt. This is what it was like for her. This is just I'm her son, and I've just inherited it. You know, it's just she must have got up to this age in her life, and that's maybe when she started feeling like this, and she managed to just get used to it. Maybe you just have to get used to this feeling. And I was like, it wasn't. It never calmed. That was the thing. It just never calmed, and it never really made sense. Apart from, I just thought, and not once did I think about taking my own life. That never entered my head. It was just complete lostness. It was just they're going to take me away. They're going to put me in a hospital. They're probably going to drug me, and I'll just be just like this for forever.
And did that feeling then make you think, okay, I don't want to reach out to people. I don't want to tell them, because the fear of, okay, what then comes next?
No, I just didn't know what to do. There was no plan. There was no my girlfriend at the time, she didn't know how to deal with that situation. She'd never been around anyone who'd gone through anything like what I'd been through, and then was experiencing. And I don't know how she found it. I don't know where she found it, but she came home and she had this leaflet that said, it was like a suicide bereavement pamphlet, group therapy thing. And I was like, I'm not going to that. Like, I can't talk about this stuff. I can't talk about what's going on. But it wasn't, I don't think it was that she was trying to show me. It was when I turned the leaflet over on the back, and it had this list of symptoms of what someone who has lost someone to suicide could feel, what they could experience. And I just read this list, and I was like, it's like a checklist of symptoms for me, and I'm just hitting every single one. I'm like, this is what I've got. This is my condition, if you like. This is what's happened. It was like a reality moment. It's like the first point in those months of despair that it all quietened a bit, and I was a bit grounded in that I could connect with what I was feeling to a factual thing. Everything else before that was I didn't I didn't have any sense of reality to what I was experiencing. I didn't know why or what or anything. Whereas this leaflet, this list of what you feel, just made complete sense. And then it said at the bottom of, come to a group, and if you can't make it to a group, there are other supports that you can do. There's private counselling, go to your doctor. And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go and phone a counsellor and get some help. And that's when the next chapter all made sense, which was, here's a list that has a list of symptoms of what I feel, and here's a solution to fix them. You ring this person, you go in, and they help you get out of this state. So I just saw it as like, oh, okay, that's what I'm meant to be. That's what I'm meant to do.
And did you get lucky in terms of like the first counsellor you sat down with, you really gelled with and really worked, or you had to kind of go through a number of different people to find someone that worked for you?
I remember seeing this woman. She got recommended to us from someone, I can't remember, but she got recommended to us, me and my sister, when we first lost Mum. We went in, I think it must have been about a month later, and we told her what happened. We were very factual. I remember we were laughing a lot because I think it was that first time that me and my sister had been in a room together, and we had described to someone else who had no idea what we had gone through, and together we had described our childhood, like how fucking mental it was. And because we were saying it out loud, and we were laughing, we must have looked like complete maniacs. We were just laughing about all these insane things that had happened. And because it sounded so strange, it sounded so weird to say them out loud, we just thought it was hilarious. We just was like, this is like, did this really happen? Like, this can't, like, it just felt comical. And then Penny, her name was the counsellor. She was like, okay, well, I think you guys could really benefit from having a chat. Do you want to book another appointment? We're like, no, like, what, you nuts? Like, I don't want to talk about this stuff again. Like, no, like, we just thought we had to come along and just tell you, and then you would say something else. But no, we don't want to pay for this. We don't want to come back and talk about it all over again. No, it's fine. And then it was like 2 years later, I still had the number, and I rung her, and I was like, yeah, I think I really could do with now coming to see you. And she said, yeah, I thought at some point you would be. I was always expecting your call. That's what she said. She said, I was always expecting your call.
Probably earlier than 2 years, I would imagine.
Yeah, she was probably thinking that. And then I headed in, and it was just, I was lucky in the sense that I kind of gelled with her from that first session because she didn't say anything. She had no reaction to what we were talking about, and I remember thinking, that's weird. She's not reacting like we're reacting. She's not laughing, but she's also not shocked. She's nothing. She's just listening. There was one person I think I tried to see when I was on my final year of uni. I kept getting these really bad headaches, like really severe, like so painful. And I went to the doctors. I said, I've got these headaches. They said, I'll try all these drugs. Tried all these drugs, didn't work. And then they went, oh, okay, well, it sounds like it's more psychological. Have you thought about seeing a therapist? And I was like, not really. But if that's what's going to make the headaches go away, let's go for it. I had to wait months to see this guy. Sat down in the doctor's surgery, essentially, but just another room that had a counsellor in it. And he wanted to know everything. And it was, I just didn't feel, this was before the breakdown, and obviously I wasn't ready then. I was still in this kind of like protective, I'm fine script that I was just, still autopiloting and running through. I just kept saying to him, I just want you to just take the headaches away. And he was like, well, let's do some breathing exercises. And I was like, breathing's not going to help. Like, just do something, do whatever you do. I was so arrogant in the terms of, and ignorant of, I just wanted it to be quick. I didn't want to put the work in. I just wanted a result there and then. And he was like trying to do breathing exercises and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's not working, and just didn't go back. And then another year later, I had the breakdown, and I'm in Penny's room having my first counselling session, and I was like, oh, okay, she's not getting me to do breathing exercises. She's not getting me to do some weird, thing. She just wants to know what's happened. And so I gave her the facts. I remember the session was I just gave her the facts and she wrote them down as like a snapshot, like milestones of events. And then she asked me this bizarre question, which was, she just said, how does that all make you feel? And I was like, I don't know what you're on about. I just told you what happened. And we had this block moment where she was like, you must feel something. And I literally couldn't. I thought she was speaking Russian or something. I just couldn't understand what she meant. And then that was the point where she was like, okay, we need to go right back to the beginning of teaching you how to connect with your emotions and how to list them, essentially, list how you feel, describe how you feel, and then share those feelings verbally in a conversation.
And so was that then the start of journaling? Was that
it? Yeah, that was that moment, because I couldn't talk. I literally couldn't talk. There was elements of where I couldn't talk because of fear of I was afraid of mum. I was never afraid of mum hearing the facts, because I knew mum would know the facts. What mum would never know was how those facts were making me feel. So, and that was what I was most afraid about talking about, because I was afraid of mum hearing how I felt and that upsetting her. Me and mum could talk about the facts all the time. Oh, mum, you cut yourself last night, or yesterday you tried hanging yourself, or anything. They were facts. They weren't. I didn't have to describe to her how her doing that made me feel. I was very good at talking about the facts. So then having to talk about those feelings, there was a sense of betraying mum, which was quite a big thing. And also I just didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't know how to say the words. So she said, I think you could really benefit from writing them down instead. She gave me this list on an A4 paper of loads of feelings and emotions. And she just said, go away, get a blank notebook, and just circle the ones that you think you feel at any point that you go to write. And then if you can, at the end of just listing them, all you got to do is just list them, just rewrite them down in a list on the blank page. And then ask yourself, why do I think I feel this way? And if you write like anything at all, just one word, one sentence, doesn't matter, that's the start. And then if you can bring that back to our next session, we can use that as a starting point to begin the journey of you being able to just feel, just feel an emotion and describe it. And that was the beginning. And it was journaling and the counselling at the same time was my way of learning to communicate, to be able to talk about not just the facts, but how those facts made me feel.
And so I get the impression it probably was quite slow to start with in terms of the journaling, but did you have a moment where, I don't know, the floodgates opened and they were just kind of, it poured out, or it never really happened like that for you?
Yeah, no, it didn't take long at all. I'm a quick learner, and I think there was an element of me where I had, 15 years worth of emotions and thoughts and feelings and everything else to get out. And as soon as and I think for me as well, writing worked perfectly because I've always been good at writing. Like at school, I was pretty poor at everything else, but English I just naturally excelled in. And I just always liked writing and reading. I grew up listening to rap music, which is, it's a lot of writing in that, in the sense of they're poets and they're saying a lot of words and they're describing how they feel and everything else. And I used to, funny enough, I used to write little rhymes and poems when I was in my mid-teens. which ironically were kind of like probably like my first journal entries without me really realising it. I never kept them. I would just burn them or bin them in case Mum would find them and saw that I was rhyming about something a bit personal. But I never connected the dots at that point. I never realised that was actually a bit of therapeutic writing for me. So when it came to actually doing it in a journal, and Penny taught me how to use this feelings list and actually connect on an emotional level, then I was just going through pages and pages and pages. I'd be there just in my bedroom for like hours, just till my hand got numb. And that taught me, didn't necessarily teach me, it gave me the confidence to then go and talk. It was like a training ground, It was like I was going to the gym and I was learning how to do this thing so that I could do it in the real world. When someone would ask me how I was feeling, I wouldn't just say to them, yeah, I'm okay. I could say, no, I'm feeling crap because, and then describe the feelings and why. And it meant that I had the confidence then to go into our counselling sessions and talk even more honestly about what I was feeling and what I wanted and what had happened, what I could do with that, with that experience and everything else. I could have conversations with my dad and tell him everything that had happened, and how it actually made me feel, how him leaving to go to Tenerife actually, how that actually made me feel, what that did to me. And from that, it was like a tap had opened, but it also was like everything got a bit calmer. I could breathe and I could sleep. I was having better relationships with people because I was able to connect with them better. I've always had an amazing relationship with my dad, but from able to share with him what had happened at home with Mum had made me feel, but also what he was doing and his actions and how they made me feel, meant he could understand himself better, and he could start to learn how to connect with his emotions and share those with me, which he had never done before. So our relationship got even stronger and even better. So it was from that initial piece of paper, teaching me how to just connect with the most basic of human emotion, and then learning how to translate that verbally to another human being was just an incredible moment for me.
And so since then, is journaling just a constant for you, or is it something that, I don't know, you go through in fits and bursts and you forget about it and then life gets on top of you again and you pick it up again? Like, what's it like for you?
Journaling for me now, and predominantly has been since, that time in counselling in 2008, has been one of many things I do to look after myself. From that moment, I knew that there was things I needed to do that helped with my anxiety, helped with my panic attacks, helped with my stress, helped with me sleeping better. I started exercising more. I would start running. I would keep journaling. I stopped taking drugs. All these different things I started to move towards and have been practicing, if you like, up until, today, to find a system of things that help me stay happy and anxiety free and everything else. So journaling is not like something I do habitually, like every day. It's just one of those things that might be part of my routine for the week.
Yeah.
I'll meditate at one point. I'll definitely hit the gym 2-3 times. I'll definitely journal once. I might go and see my counsellor. There's probably about 7 things I have. And in my head, I sort of say to myself, if I do at least one of these 7 things a day, that means that I've done 7 things in that week to look after myself.
Yeah.
So they're just all in my kind of toolkit of things that I do to kind of just keep myself grounded and balanced and healthy and stable, I suppose.
Yeah. And so then when did the idea come for creating what now is MindJournal? So obviously journaling's helped you, and so when did that translate into maybe I need to be getting other people into this? Like, was there a particular incident that sparked it?
It was a chat with a friend of mine who was going through a bad spell, and I'd said to him, you should just try and keep a journal. Just write down how you feel, see what happens, and if you don't like it, or if you're worried about someone reading it, bin it, burn it, get rid of it, doesn't matter, it's gone. And he came back to me like a couple of days later and he said, I just can't get my head around this. Like, where do you start? It was like, I got a blank notebook, went to Paper Chase, got a really nice pen, sat down and could not think about where you start. There's like a million things in your head. Like, where do you start with that? And I just was like, I can completely relate to that feeling of there's so much, and everything in our heads and in our lives is a mixture of thoughts and feelings, and it's hard to dissect the two sometimes and go, right, well, I'm just going to list down everything I'm thinking, or I'm just going to list down everything I'm feeling. And being a creative person and a designer and always coming up with ideas, I'm always trying to, think of a new way to do this or a new way to do that, or a new idea for a product or a new idea for that. I just had this light bulb moment, which was like, well, I know what that feels like. I even to this day struggle to know where to start. Why don't I create a system that helps people to start? So every time you come to write, even if you're a pro journaler, you've been doing it for years, every one of us still has that kind of freeze moment when we see the blank page. What if there was like a little thing in there that was like a little penny from my counselling? If there was her guidance that just said, but how do you feel? Let's just start there and let's just tap into some feelings and maybe tick them off and just get the ball rolling and warm yourself up a little bit. And it just, that was the kind of light bulb moment of thinking, why don't I create a guided journal system for my mate and also for myself? If I can create it, that's something that I would use, even after journaling for 10 years, then other people would use too. And then it evolved through lots of testing and lots of research, and I'm a designer, so there was a lot of kind of like design challenges we were facing in terms of like, well, who are we as a brand? Who are we talking to? Who's our audience? Who do I feel comfortable actually sharing my journaling experience with? We were working with this amazing psychology professor called Karen Pine, who I knew of her and her work, and I got in touch with her and explained to her what I was doing. She became a bit of a mentor and a consultant for us. And she asked me this amazing question, which was, she said, who do you feel comfortable talking to most in your life? And I'd never really thought about that much before, but I'd always felt more comfortable talking to guys than I have talking to women. And I think that comes from me not wanting to share stuff with my mum in case it would upset her and she would do something. I've never had a relationship with my sister, not until more recently probably, where I can talk, or we can both talk more emotionally about things that have happened. And in my relationships, I've always wanted to be the strong man who's fine and who can look after everyone and is okay and is resilient. Whereas with my mates growing up, we all knew we were all struggling and we were all trying to survive in our own ways. And there was no shame in not being okay one day. And I remember thinking, I remember with one mate of mine, when my mum was hospitalised for the first time on her first suicide attempt, I told him, I said, mate, can I stay at your house tonight? My mum's in hospital. She's just tried taking her life. I just need a place to stay. I can't stay at home. And he was like, mate, that's cool. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Just crash at mine. And there was no judging from when I told this to him. There was no shock. It was just, yeah, totally. Like, it was, he understood that was normal almost. It wasn't extreme for him to hear that because he had also experienced extreme things. And so from that point on, I think I've always felt comfortable talking to guys about my vulnerabilities or my fears or my anxieties, because I've had that solid group of friends. And then when I learned to talk about it to my dad, and he was cool about being more emotional with me, that's when MindJournal became a real clear guy-focused brand. Because I could see it and go, I want to talk to guys. I feel comfortable talking to guys, and I want guys to know that whatever they're going through is just as okay as what I've experienced myself. There's no shame about it. There's no anything about it. It's just okay with what you're experiencing. And so that's when we thought, okay, then why don't we do it for guys and see if guys like the idea of keeping a journal.
Yeah. And look, I think it's not that you're saying that men and women don't suffer with mental health issues or that life's hard, but it's obviously just like picking something that is then specifically aimed at a target audience so that you can create something that is kind of more appealing but just does more work for that one niche.
Yeah, it was just so that it was something I felt more comfortable doing. If I had created it and presented it as a neutral thing for both men and women, I felt that I would have to reflect that in the brand, and I would have to change the way I spoke. I'm probably wrong, but it was just how I felt.
Sure.
I was, for the first time, I was going to go out into the world and not just share it with my friends and my family about what had happened. I was going to speak this about complete random people. I was going to put a video up on KickStarter, and I was going to share this with everyone who's ever worked with me, ever known me, or doesn't know me, and I was going to tell them about everything that's ever happened to me. And so that sense of vulnerability and pure fear, I was terrified about doing it. I just felt more comfortable about knowing that the people that were going to be listening to it predominantly were going to be guys. I just felt safer, I suppose, in that room that I felt I was presenting it to. And I don't know why. I just, but it just was the way that I felt like I had to do it. I just felt the natural way of doing it for me.
And how was the Kickstarter process? Like, what was your expectations going into it? Were you confident you'd meet the targets?
No, not at all. My mission at the beginning was when me and my partner Natasha, when we were sitting down, and we were like, okay, well, what's the goal here? Like, what's the mission objective? And we were like, okay, well, our friend had this issue. We recommended journaling, wasn't for him. If we can create something that helps someone like him to keep the journal, so mission objective is help one guy, change one guy's life through being able to keep a journal, who's never kept a journal before or has wanted to, but has struggled to, or whatever. It was the power of one. That was our thinking. We didn't really think we were going to get funded. We were asking for quite a lot of money. I think we were asking for something like £17,500 in funding, because I wanted it to be a premium product. I wanted it to be of good quality. And at that point in time, we didn't really know what we were doing in terms of manufacturing. We still had a lot to learn in that sense. So no, we went into it with very, very low expectations, and no real sense of reality of what this was going to be perceived to be like, or just any of its potential, really. So when it launched, it kind of for me, it was like it just turned everything a bit upside down in my head, because I was a little bit like, I wasn't expecting so many guys to need it so badly. And to then, from me sharing what had happened to me, for that to inspire other guys that I had no idea who they were, get in touch and share their darkest days and their toughest experiences. It was like a kind of it was like a moment of I was never really alone, growing up with everything that I was going through. And I knew that with my close group of friends, and I just thought I was lucky. And I think from having my story go out there and then for other guys to sort of see it, it was almost like they were included in my group of mates, and we were all just groups of mates from all over the place that were all connected, and we all knew each other and understood each other. And it was very emotional. It was just a very emotional moment for me, just to kind of go, I was never alone, and I'll never feel alone in that way again. And so with none of these guys, because now I've done something where we can all feel connected. So it was amazing. It was incredible.
And was it like 3 days or 4 days that you met the target?
Yeah, we managed to just get some amazing press from some really cool blogs in the States and in the UK. Within 3 days, we got our funding target met, which was a strange feeling. And then it just kept going, and I was just like, when does this stop? What do we do now? This wasn't meant to happen. And then it got to the end of the 25 days, and we did something like £45,000 in funding. There was something like, there was like 1,500 backers or something ridiculous, and it meant that we could print. We were originally going to print 500 copies, and it meant that we could print 1,500 copies. We knew we were going to help 1,500 guys. And the target was 1. And I was like, we only wanted to help 1, and we've helped 1,500. How does this work? And it just kept, all the comments kept pouring in, and all the appreciation for what we were doing. That then led to us getting a book deal. We went through this whole kind of like mad. Again, it was like another moment of just what is happening. We had an agent, a book agent, get in touch. He wanted to help us to then get a book deal, and I hadn't really thought about it, but thought, yeah, if that reaches more guys, if that gets us into the hands of more guys and helps them to keep a journal, let's do it. And then we secured a deal with Penguin Random House and got a book out last May, I think it was. Yeah, last May, which was even more messed up because the publishers announced to me, I think about a month before the published date when it was going to be available. I had no control over it. I didn't know when it was going to be released. They phoned me and said, "Oh, we've finally found a date that we're going to launch the book. It's going to be on the 4th of May." And I froze because the 4th of May is my mum's birthday. And I was just, it was like everything that had ever happened to me, everything that I'd ever experienced, the whole story, if you like, has been almost like, it's been for this reason. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like giving it more purpose.
Yeah.
There was a reason behind it all, and the reason was I was meant to do this. I was meant to experience everything that I've experienced because I was meant to create this thing, because I was meant to help people. And I think that's kind of, and I've always felt that. I've always felt like I've enjoyed helping people, and I've always wanted to help people, and I've just never known really how to. And I feel like finally I found my thing. I found the thing that I'm meant to kind of give to the world, if you like, to kind of help just one guy. If it just helps one guy like me that was out there that doesn't know how to talk about whatever he's going through, then job done. That's amazing.
And as I said at the beginning, I've got the journal and I've started using it, and I've read through the whole thing, even though I haven't done all of the exercises. And I think there's like 30 exercises throughout it. And reading through them, it seems to like shed light on all the potential highlights that someone can be having in their life, or the struggles that someone can have. And it almost feels like all of the areas that a therapist would explore, but in journal form. Is that kind of how you think about it? That if someone doesn't want to go to therapy or isn't ready at that stage, that they can be doing it in written form with the help of this book?
Yeah, totally. That was the objective, was to kind of say, okay, if we're going to have a framework and it's going to be a guided system that's going to help someone journal, why do they want to journal in the first place? You know, where are they at in their lives? What do they want to achieve or accomplish, or are they not entirely happy with? And I just looked at myself in the sense of all the different things that I've experienced and have tried to kind of resolve. And I've probably seen maybe 3 or 4 different counsellors over the years. So I've had a lot of experience of different practices of how therapy works, and different kind of styles, if you like, from CBT to person-centered kind of therapy. And so I took that, and we took the work that Professor Karen Pine has done and her research. And I always wanted to kind of create it for any guy in any situation, whether they were, top of the world, loving life, but just wanted to feel a bit more grounded, or they just had a new goal or a new objective that they wanted to kind of hit, or for a guy who was, rock bottom, really vulnerable, really struggling, and needed to kind of help himself kind of get out of the hole that he felt that he was in. And so it's always been designed to kind of be open and accessible to all guys. I mean, it's blown my mind in terms of like what guys have kind of used it. We've had, straight guys, gay guys, top execs, to, guys that are, struggling with, income and everything else, that just were like, I need to get this thing to kind of help me in my situation. We've had, guys in the LGBT community. We had a transgender guy that was using it to work out what kind of man he wanted to become post-operation, which completely, I think that one is the one that touched me the most. Because as a designer, you always have a brief, if you like. There's always like, you're creating this, this thing's going to solve this problem for this person. And I would never have imagined the journal to be or MindJournal to be kind of accepted, if you like, so widely by such a variety of different guys. And that for me was the one that I was like, yeah, that's a really amazing one. And it's just, it continues that. I mean, we still get messages now from all these different guys that have that are using the 30-day, or we call it 30-day, but it's, you can use it how quickly or slowly as you like. But the idea is, if you at first use the program one response every day to build up the habit, but they've been using the program and getting amazing results from it.
And so, Ollie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story, and for also creating MindJournal. Like, it is an incredible book, and what you're doing and helping men able to get into journaling. I just think it's such a benefit. So
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. But like, before I let you go, where should people head to find out either more about you or more about the book?
The best place is probably the website, because the story's up there on the blog, how it all started in more detail. You can actually see the product for real, the journal itself. Our video's up there from our KickStarter, which is quite interesting. So just head to mindjournals.com, and there's just tons of links up there and all the information that you need.
Perfect. Well, look, I will put those links in the show notes. But thank you once again for coming on the show. This is great, and I know that it's going to help a lot of people.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for the time and for the opportunity.